with that emotional storm we live in, with that Rolodex of hurts, with our inability to see things practically and logically and work toward problem solving, that makes us terrible communicators, and we're incapable of creating that safe environment to be able to openly share and collaborate to find solutions to the problem. We're the problem here. Hello, I'm Karen Seitz, and this is the Happy Wife School. This podcast is for married women to realize that we are responsible for our happiness, that no one and no thing can make us happy, and that our husbands are not the source of our unhappiness. In each episode, I red pill married women to know that we are the problem in our marriages to good men. For the good men, this podcast will wake you up to the realities of your wife's woman ways, to take back the power you've unknowingly given away to her emasculation in a constructive, caring way. Before we dive into today's episode, a couple reminders. My message is meant for common and usual marital issues. My podcast is not intended for abusive, violent, or compulsive behaviors in a marriage that are threatening or dangerous. Also, please take a second to visit my website and learn more about my courses, which offer solutions for married women and good men. You can find the link in the description below. With all that being said, let's get started. Today, we are going to talk about communication. And the big marriage myth revealed is that there is a widespread belief in our culture, in our psychotherapy community, in women, and even good men fall for this myth. And the myth is that men are the poor communicators in a relationship or a marriage, and women are the good communicators. And that is such a myth and so far from the truth, because the reality is that as women, we are terrible, terrible communicators. And so the reason I want to talk about this today is, one, that's one of the things that people say is necessary for a healthy marriage and a healthy relationship is good communication. And because of, as women, being really, really poor communicators, it makes it impossible to work on communication in a marriage. And that's what I want to get into today. And of course, the solution. So stay with me till the end, because we will look at a solution for both women and for men. And the reason I want to talk about this, not only because communication is a buzzword of what needs to be worked on and what makes a healthy marriage and what makes a healthy relationship, but also because last week's show, I talked about hurts and how as women, we have a Rolodex of hurts inside of us that create an emotional storm and roller coaster internally. That is the very reason why we are terrible communicators. So if you didn't get a chance to see last week's show, go check that out on hurt and forgiveness and the process of letting go. And I thought it just set me up nicely to be able to talk about communication. So I'm talking about a bigger picture of communication today, not just the day-to-day communication between a couple, but really communication in the sense of working together to resolve issues and challenges in the relationship and being able to talk through those things and come to reasonable, fair solutions together. So communication, and what I'm talking about today, the umbrella of where we're going to go, is really about two people in a marriage or a relationship feeling safe in the environment to openly share and be honest, to be able to collaborate, to find fair, reasonable solutions, and to have that safe environment where their words, their feelings, their opinions are not used against them and weaponized. So when I looked up just a quick research of what communication in a marriage is all about, I found a beautiful little summary that communication promotes intimacy and emotional connection. It helps spouses build trust and respect, and increases their ability to work together to solve problems, That's the big picture of what we're talking about today. And I'm going to set this up a little bit and expose the myth of why we think men are poor communicators in a marriage or a relationship and break that down. And then we're going to get into 3 ways that women are poor communicators. And then we're going to look at a solution. It's really important to understand that umbrella of what communication is supposed to be about, because as women, with that emotional storm we live in, with that Rolodex of hurts, with our inability to see things practically and logically and work toward problem solving, that makes us terrible communicators, and we're incapable of creating that safe environment to be able to openly share and collaborate to find solutions to the problem. We're the problem here. And so the reason that we think men are poor communicators, and it's such a myth, because men are actually natural communicators and excellent communicators, because men are direct and they say what they mean. Whereas women were very poor communicators because we are indirect and we talk in circles because we are pain avoiders. So we talk in circles and stay stuck in our emotional turmoil internally and are unable to say what we mean and unable to speak directly to be able to come to a solution to the problems in the marriage. And we're going to get a little more into that a little bit later. So why do we believe that men are such poor communicators? Why do we believe men are such poor communicators? It is because of the emasculation that takes place in a marriage and a relationship. When a good man has been made and shamed to be bad and wrong for who he is, to constantly have his thoughts, his feelings, his opinions, his concerns in the relationship dismissed and denied, that causes a man to shut down and pull away. And that's why we believe that men are poor communicators. But what ends up happening and why they are unable to be direct and approach the issues and challenges in the relationship is that generally, once a good man has been emasculated in the relationship and constantly gets the message from his wife that his thoughts, feelings, and concerns are not important and wrong, then good men go along to get along. So the communication in the relationship and why the issues don't get resolved is it becomes whatever you say, dear, whatever you want. And good men just shut up and go along to get along because they get the message over and over and over and over again that there is no point in them expressing their feelings and their concerns and trying to solve the issues and problems in the relationship because they constantly get shut down, dismissed, and made wrong. So they stop trying. Then what happens, and I always like to say, I'm speaking from my own experience and what I've learned about myself as a woman, what I've learned in the dynamics that I have with my husband, who is a good man. These are things I've had to work on, ladies, for the women listening. There's no attack. There's no judgment. It's just hashing this out so we can see another path and have another way to go. And our husbands, as good men, deserve for us to work on these issues and to rise above our limitations and shortcomings to become good wives and become the best version of ourselves so that we can have a dance and a partnership with our husbands. That's why we're looking at this. Just always like to say that this isn't anything I'm above. This comes directly from what I've had to work on in myself. The problem, and then why good men begin to believe. I can't tell you the men that I have worked with who believe they are poor communicators and are just absolutely convinced that they are terrible communicators is because as women, we are able to gaslight them into believing that they are terrible communicators. And we create the unsafe environment for the communication to be able to point the finger out and blame men for how they're showing up or not showing up, that we feel unsafe and being able to communicate about the tough issues or just the problems in the marriage or the relationship that need to get solved. The truth is, as women, we create the unsafe environment. We create the unsafe environment. And one of the ways that I help good men to see they are not the problem in communication is, one, good men are problem solvers. They don't want to wallow in the issues. They don't want to emote. They want to get to resolution so we can work together, move forward, and create a healthy marriage and have that intimacy together to be able to talk through some of the tough things, to be able to get to a place to be able to work together. How I help good men see that is it's not uncommon that I will hear from them. I'm not a good communicator. I shut down with my wife. I'm terrified to bring anything up with her. I can't do it. And so I know I'm the problem there. One of the things I do is I help men see, I will ask them, because a lot of the men I talk to are very competent and successful in their careers. And so I will ask them, hey, do you have people that you manage or people underneath you at work or people that you have to help supervise? And a lot of times they do. And I'll say, do you have to have conversations and give people constructive criticism and bring up uncomfortable things? And they'll often say, yes, I do. And I'll say, do you have any problem doing that? Do you get scared to do that or have those conversations? And they say, no, not at all. It's just part of my job. It's just part of what I have to do. It's the right thing to do. And I have no problem stepping in to do that at work. And then I'll ask them, do you have kids? A lot of times they do. I say, do you have to have challenging conversations with your kids, give consequences, help them see things that aren't fun to help them see and hold them accountable? And they say, yes, I do. And I say, do you have any problem doing that as a dad? And they'll say, no, I don't. And so I say, okay, then you're not the problem in the communication, because if your wife created a safe environment for you to be able to approach her and she was willing to be a mature adult to work with you to find solutions and fair solutions to the problems, would there be any problems in your marriage? And they're like, no, I guess not. So it's us ladies. We create the unsafe environment. And part of that is that we are so selfish and can only think of what we are feeling, can only think about how the problem is affecting us and how we are not the problem, that anytime our husbands try to bring anything up with us, whether that's an issue around the budget or how we're talking to them or how they feel that we're disengaged from the relationship or challenges with parenting or challenges with in-laws or going away on a vacation even. Anytime they try to bring something up with us, we take it as a personal attack that we are wrong and bad. And so we shut off and our walls go sky high. So how could we have constructive communication in a safe environment where both people feel safe to share and be open and honest and not have their words, thoughts, opinions weaponized against them? How could we do that when we are so selfish and only concerned about how we are feeling and create an unsafe environment by taking everything as a personal attack? It's not possible. It's not possible with us as women unwilling to drop our walls, unwilling to look at things logically and practically. It's not possible to have a safe environment in the marriage for us to come together and talk things through. And I know some women are listening. Well, my husband's the problem. I don't feel safe to bring things up with him. So here's where I want to get into 3 ways women are poor communicators so that men can undo the brainwashing and get out of the cognitive dissonance that they are the problem in the communication and the marriage or relationship. And for us as women to expose our shortcomings and limitations so we can overcome them. I tell my students all the time, the self-awareness and the willingness to take accountability and responsibility for ourselves, because we're the only ones that we can change, is 90% of the change that can happen in our lives, in our marriage, in our different relationships to turn around our limitations and shortcomings. Just having that self-awareness and the willingness to take accountability and the willingness to change. So that's why we want to look at this, so we can expose, and this is called the red pill for women. So the red pill is for us as women getting out of the cognitive dissonance that men are Neanderthals and terrible communicators, and seeing the truth of our nature as women and how we show up to the table and how we are very poor communicators. So we're going to get into the 3 ways why women are poor communicators to help break this down, and then also help break good men out of the cognitive dissonance that you're the problem in the communication. So this is a red pill for you too, men. If you've bought into that story and brainwashing from your wife that you're the problem in your communication, I want you to be able to see it from a different perspective, because for both of us as women and men, it's being in the reality of what's really going on that we can actually move forward and take steps to change. So the first way that women are poor communicators, and again, it's really important as I go through this, we're talking about the big picture of communication, that safe environment to be open and honest and share and collaborate to come to fair, reasonable solutions to the problems, not the day-to-day communication, which I'll talk a little bit about at the end. But big picture, the first way that as women we are poor communicators is we communicate with low emotional intelligence. And I define low emotional intelligence as the inability to be in control of our internal emotional state. Our low emotional intelligence is really our emotional instability and lack of control over our emotions. So when we try to communicate about the challenging issues or just the issues in general in a relationship, whether that's a budget, whether that's sex and how often we have sex, whether it's around parenting, whether it's around family and in-laws. As women, we communicate through our internal emotional state, which is a mess, and we are not in control of it. So we are looking through a lens of emotional volatility and approaching the problems and the issues in the marriage or relationship emotionally. And there's no solution when we look at problems emotionally. Instead of seeing the challenges and the issues pragmatically, logically, putting our emotions aside and willing to just work on the problem and come to that solution, we're incapable of that. It's like we're adverse to it. When we're communicating with our husbands and trying to share openly and find resolution to the issues, we're not dealing with facts. We're not dealing with the reality. We come from an emotional place of complicating the issues, seeing them through the emotional lens, which creates a totally false reality of the issue and problem. It's distorted, and we're not seeing things clearly for what they are. And so in addition to that, with that low emotional intelligence as women, we don't want to talk to get to a solution. We want to talk about our feelings and emote. And we call that communication. When actually that's really a one-way street and a one-way process of communication that's actually really just venting. So when there's a problem in the relationship, we're not looking to solve it with our husband. We are looking to complain and vent and point the finger out of how they have caused us to feel, and essentially want to air our grievances and call it good. That's our idea of communicating. If you haven't already, you go check out my episode on venting, and I break down venting as another angle of how we are poor communicators. So that's why we talk in circles. We're unable to be direct, and we're not dealing with facts. We are speaking through our emotions, and there's no solution there, and there's no ability to see things for what they really are, because we've already created this elaborate story and victim stance of what's happening, and we can't just deal with the problem without pointing the finger out and blaming and being emotional about it. The second way that women are poor communicators, and again, talking from the place of having the deeper communication in a relationship to solve the issues and create trust and intimacy to be able to have a safe environment to do so. As women, the second way we are poor communicators, we respond to a difference in opinion or constructive criticism with temper tantrums. We respond to a difference in opinion or constructive criticism with temper tantrums. We do not want to be told where we need to improve, where our husbands feel dismissed or disrespected or unheard. And anytime our husband tries to share their opinion or share the problem they are having with us, it ends up in a temper tantrum because we feel that we're wrong and bad, and we become defensive. It's pretty clear to me in my own experience as a woman, and I know many men out there listening share this experience, that most communication with a woman ends up in an argument. Most communication with a woman ends up in an argument because we take everything as a personal attack that we are being made wrong and bad, and then we become incredibly defensive and will push against any criticism or flaw that our husband is pointing out that they would like for us to work on. We become a grown-up child and essentially have a temper tantrum. And this is where, I have a video about Mrs. Right and how men can know when they are right and Mrs. Always Right is wrong, because we constantly make our husbands wrong and bad, that they are the problem, and we are our Mrs. Right, and we always have to be right because we are incapable of having something exposed about us that we need to work on, that we need to look at in ourselves and take accountability for. So we melt down into temper tantrums. And over the years, as I've taught this to women and also taught men this about their wives, a lot of times when we hear that word temper tantrum, we think of a child wailing on the floor and kicking and screaming and having, an outright meltdown, like what you might see in the middle of a grocery store. But temper tantrums from adult women come in different flavors. That's not as common, although I have heard stories of temper tantrums like that. A woman, banging her head against a closet wall or shutting herself in a room and just having a total emotional meltdown. But a lot of times a temper tantrum from a woman can be a little more subtle. And it can be a woman just shutting down and turning into the ice queen. It can be a woman, a lot of you have wives. If you bring up something that she's done that you would like her to work on, or a tone she has with you, or ways she disrespects you, she'll get very emotional and start crying and say, I'm so bad, I'm so sorry, and just so emotional. That's a temper tantrum. And she might say, I feel so guilty, I'm so sorry, I'm that way, I just can't help it, and I don't know how to change it, and I'm so embarrassed. That's a temper tantrum. That's her not wanting to look at herself and playing the martyr and feeling sorry for herself that she's been busted and called out. I know that in myself. That was very much definitely me, even as a child. When I would get in trouble, I would just start crying and get really emotional and sensitive as a defense mechanism to try to get my parents, mainly my dad, to back off and not give me a punishment, because I wanted to make him feel sorry for me. That's what your wife is doing when she does that. A temper tantrum can be storming off and going into another room. A temper tantrum can look like your wife being just perfectly calm and finding ways to try to point the finger out at you and acting like everything is fine on the outside of, okay, sure, thank you for sharing that with me. But men, you can feel what's really going on inside. You need to trust that. So a temper tantrum can happen completely internally and covertly, to where it's not even showing or being expressed on the outside. And in that temper tantrum, we're just being a grown-up child. A temper tantrum, when you bring up something with your wife and she gets defensive or doesn't want to look at it, can also look like her giving in to you and giving in to what you want. And then she will purposely sabotage whatever you've decided, to be able to say, see, I knew this wouldn't work out. You're wrong. I'm right. I try to think of an example of that. And what I thought of was, this happened recently with a female student of mine, where her husband, they were going on vacation, and he picked where he wanted to go on vacation, and she didn't want to go there. And she gave in to where he wanted to go. And she sabotaged the whole trip, to be able to say, see, you should have gone where I wanted to go. So I thought that was an interesting aspect of this. So we can't have communication. We can't have a safe environment for both spouses to be able to share openly when we act this way as women and we have these temper tantrums. Remember, communication is feeling safe in the environment to be able to be open and share without being made wrong and without someone's words being weaponized against them. And then as women, we wonder why there's no intimacy in the relationship. And speaking of emotional intimacy, it's because we've sucked it all out. The unsafe environment we create for there to be no constructive communication, then there can be no emotional connection and intimacy with our husbands. We've shut it down by taking everything as a personal attack, wanting to blame them, and having no accountability or willingness to be vulnerable and have accountability to look at ourselves. What we want to realize as women is that accountability and looking at ourselves and taking responsibility for our shortcomings requires vulnerability. It requires being exposed and openness to be humbled and to look at ourselves. I assure you, ladies, when your husband, as a good man, brings things up with you in the marriage and things that are bothering him and things he sees that are hurting him in the relationship, he is coming from a good place. He's coming from a place of fighting for the marriage. He's fighting for you and he's fighting for himself. He has no malicious intent to make us wrong and bad. They are problem solvers and they want to look at the issues. So the third way that we are poor communicators as women, we are pain avoiders and do not want to solve the issues. We are pain avoiders and we do not want to solve the issues. We have no interest in solving the issues, which is what communication is all about. And what we are talking about is to be able to openly and honestly talk about the issues and come together to collaborate to find a fair and reasonable solution. We are adverse to conflict and we are adverse to resolution. We will do anything to avoid the pain of being exposed and being held accountable. So we destroy the environment to prevent communication so that nothing can be solved. And there are many ways as women that we destroy the environment to make it safe to have constructive conversations, to make it safe for our husbands to come to us and bring up issues that they're struggling with, that they would like to work together as a team to find a solution to. One of the biggest ways that we destroy the safe environment to be able to have constructive communication as women is that we know exactly how to poke, prod, and push our husbands' buttons in a conversation, in communication, to make them react negatively. So we will push and push and push, sometimes with a perfectly calm look on our face, and able to push our husbands over the edge for them to yell, for them to say hurtful things, for them to slam a fist on the counter. I remember one time many years ago, gosh, how long? It was probably 7 years ago or so now. When I was trying to learn to do this. I just really challenged as a woman with this wiring. But I pushed my husband to get upset and he threw a glass in the sink and it broke. And I used that as I'm not safe with you. I need to leave now. And we will do that. We know exactly how to get our husbands to react and do things that then we can say they are creating the unsafe environment. They yell, they'll throw something, not even at us, just like my husband threw something in the sink. Very level-headed, good man, not a violent man at all. We'll get them to yell. We'll get them to storm out of the room and slam a door, punch a wall, and then weaponize that against them, that they have created the unsafe environment when we were the instigators and did that all as a way. It's kind of ironic, right? All as a way to avoid pain, avoid the emotional pain of being exposed and looking at ourselves and avoiding solving the issues. Another way that we create an unsafe environment and weaponize communication to avoid getting to that resolution is we will bring up things from the past. So our husband might come to us and bring up something he'd like to work on. Let's just use budget, and wants to work on our spending and try to get us on a budget. And we'll bring up things from a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. Well, what about when you bought this? And what about when you were spending money on this? And we'll try to weaponize their actions against them to avoid looking at ourselves and avoid what they're trying to talk about and just totally take the conversation off track. Another way we create unsafe environment to have communication is we'll weaponize things our husband has vulnerably shared with us in the past, that they've opened up and shared a fear, or they've opened up and shared a weakness or a shortcoming. And in a conversation, we will pull those things out of our back pocket and weaponize those things against them. Ultimately, in our pain avoidance and not wanting to resolve the issues, all the ways we create an unsafe environment are through our emasculation of our husbands so that they feel unsafe and will either react negatively or shut down. And again, go along to get along to avoid rocking the boat because of the unsafe environment we have created as women. In this pain avoidance and in our unwillingness to resolve issues, the reason we don't want the issues resolved, the reason we want the issues with a budget or the issues with sex and intimacy or the issues with parenting or the issues with family and in-laws to persist is so that we have something and someone to blame and an excuse of why we're unhappy, why we are miserable in our marriages, and a reason, again, to play the victim and not have to look at ourselves. That's why we want the problems to persist. So for the men wondering, gosh, we talked about this. She said she would change it. She's not changing it. The reason she's not changing it is she wants the problem there because it's the perfect excuse to be unhappy and be a victim and blame you or blame the marriage or blame her past or blame her upbringing for why she can't change, because then she doesn't have to look at herself and be accountable. And so men, you want to know, this is how you know you are not the problem. This is how you know you are not the problem, because as a good man, you're pragmatic and you are a problem solver. If it was up to a good man, he could sit down and list out the main issues and problems in the relationship, which is a short list. For us as women, the the list of problems and issues we have with our husband in marriage, again, is probably a Rolodex. But good men have a short list of if these things were solved, things would be good. And if it was up to them, they would just sit down, have a mature conversation about what the problem is, what some reasonable, fair solutions are. And if as women, we were mature adults and willing to do those things and willing to collaborate with our husbands, the problems would be resolved and we would have a wonderful relationship. Part of the reason that I know that, one, again, good men are problem solvers. Two, this is actually an exercise that I have good men do in our marriage rescue course for good men, is we teach them about having tough conversations with their wives, and we ask them to list out what are the 5 issues. If you were able to have a conversation to solve these issues, what would be a fair, reasonable solution to this problem? And they're wonderful at coming up with that. And then the reflection at the end of what they realize is that they're not the problem. Because if their wife was willing to sit down and she didn't create an unsafe environment and they could actually talk about these things, all the issues would be solved. So women, I've said this before on other occasions, but we would be wise. We would be very, very, very wise to listen to our husbands, to let them lead, to bring up the issues and let them lead in a fair, reasonable solution, and step up to the plate and hold ourselves accountable and have integrity to follow through and change. And we would have a lovely dance with our husbands and a lovely, lovely, lovely marriage. And that's what I experience. These are things I struggle with. I struggle with tough conversations and pain avoidance for sure. I've come a long, long way, but that is truly what creates intimacy. I never feel closer to my husband than when he brings something up that is an issue or a challenge that he wants solved. A good man will always talk about his shortcoming in that problem. They're not trying to escape responsibility. They run into responsibility and want that accountability. and they want us to work with them to get the issue solved. So when my husband, again, brings up something with me and I am able to quiet and overcome my woman ways that are happening internally and be humble and vulnerable and admit that, yes, what you are saying is true and I do need to change that. Thank you for bringing it up. I never feel closer to my husband than when I am able to do that. That is what creates true intimacy, when there is that safe environment and we're able to bring things up and be humble and let it in and work on it. That's how you will feel very close to your husband. And for the women out there saying, well, he's the one unable to be vulnerable and let in the things I need him to work on. Again, we're creating the unsafe environment through our emasculation, and 99% of the things we want our husbands to change, we are not seeing through a reality. We're seeing through a distorted reality that we've created through how we treat them and how they're responding to our walls, how they are responding to our emasculation of them. That if we dropped our walls and we showed up kindly and lovingly and respectfully, those issues go away. Your husband re-engages, and the good man you married is right there waiting for you and has been the whole time. But we can't see that because of our poor treatment of them and the unsafe environment that we create. And if there is an issue in general, good man is like, tell me what it is, I'll fix it. And then the problem is they will do it, but we're still unhappy just in ourselves. So no matter what they do, it doesn't make us happy. And our list just keeps getting longer and longer and longer and longer, and the issues are never solved. So we have to be willing to see that we are the problem if we want to change and we want to have the marriage and relationship that we always dreamed of. A good man is willing. And again, if you drop your walls and you show up kindly and respectfully, all the things you think he's doing, you'll see aren't really there. Or if they were a result of how you were treating him. And as soon as you're just kind and happy in yourself and not so defensive, you won't experience any of those things from him, whether him disengaging from the relationship, getting angry. We often will see our husbands acting like children. It's because they're rebelling. They're rebelling against the ways that we treat them and our controlling nature. So when we stop that, then the good man, again, we married is right there, has been there the whole time, and we can actually see them for who they are. So those are the 3 ways women are poor communicators. Number 1, we communicate with low emotional intelligence. We have such an emotional storm happening inside of us that we emote instead of actually having constructive, pragmatic communication. Number 2, we respond to a difference in opinion from our husband or constructive criticism from our husband with a temper tantrum. We're unable to let that in and become defensive because we have to be right and we refuse to be wrong. And number 3, we are pain avoiders, and we want to do anything we can to avoid resolution. We actually want the problems and issues to persist, so we have something to blame, and we have an excuse for why we're unhappy and why the marriage isn't working. The other place that I'm not going to get into today, but another place of why we're poor communicators is as a little more surface in the day-to-day communication, that as women, we have what I call woman speak. We speak like a totally different language. And some of those ways that make communication very difficult on a day-to-day basis of how as women we are indirect and talk in circles is, number 1, we will ask questions rather than saying what we want. So like, say we want to go to a movie, instead of saying, hey babe, I'd really like to go see this movie tonight and I want you to come with me. Can we go do that? Like 99% of the time, a good man's going to be like, yeah, sure. But instead of doing it that way, as women, we will ask a question. Hey, do you want to go to a movie tonight? And our husband might not feel like going to a movie and he'll say, no, not really. And then we pout and feel upset. And we baited them and asked them a trap question that they couldn't answer correctly to. So we ask questions rather than saying what we want. Another way is we'll make hints that our husbands are supposed to infer instead of being direct and saying what needs to happen. Like you'd say, a simple example, the trash needs to be taken out, or there's no trash bag. Or say our husband took the trash out but didn't put a bag in the trash can. Well, say I'm like, oh, I wonder if we're out of trash bags. And it's a hint instead of saying, hey, can you put a trash bag in the trash can? And another way we have women speak is we're never truthful about how we feel. Our husbands will feel that we're upset about something. They'll ask, hey, is everything okay? Yeah, I'm totally fine. So that's a different subject for a different time, but that's another way we're poor communicators, this woman speak that happens on the day to day. We really, oh man, we really got a lot to work on here, ladies. So let's get into the solution. So the solution for women and our poor communication. One, we have to be honest. We are not good communicators. Being emotional does not make us good communicators at all. It actually makes us poor communicators. So we have to be willing to be honest about that and see that and stop projecting onto our husbands that they are poor communicators. And then the solution is learning that it is possible, ladies. And for the men out there too that are skeptics, it is possible. It is possible to learn to be in control of our emotional state and create emotional stability. And when we have that emotional stability, we have that calm internal emotional state and the ability to be in control of our emotional state, to not let our emotions run our responses and reactions and interactions in life. I call that high emotional intelligence. But that emotional stability that we can create is actually how we become happy, meaning content, fulfilled, feeling good about ourselves, feeling stable, having a healthy relationship with ourselves. That's the experience of happiness. And it happens through learning to be in control of our emotional state, which we've never been taught as women is one possible, and that it's just a choice. Once we're given the right context and we're given a roadmap to be able to do that, which is what I teach women in my happiness program. But once we learn the path to actually have that self-awareness and learn to be in control, even when we are feeling our emotions getting overwhelming, the ability to be in control of that and actually choose how we respond is the solution, because then we can be open to our husband's feelings and thoughts and concerns in the relationship and actually be able to have a safe environment to talk about these things and collaborate to come to a solution. That's actually possible, and it feels really good when you're able to do that. You'll feel really, really good about yourself. I'm not void of emotion inside of me. There are many times that it's the self-awareness and just understanding my wiring as a woman that I can feel what's going on internally and know, okay, that's what's going on. So that means I'm in victim. I'm not wanting to look at myself, and can actually override that to be open to my husband and not get defensive. And we've got a good dance together. Sometimes he'll see my face. He goes, "Ooh, you're triggered by that." And then it's like, dang it. Then I have to be like, yeah, I am. Because that's okay. Take your time. And it might just take me a minute. I'll go to the bathroom, take a deep breath, and come out and be like, you're right. You're totally right. Thank you. And like, my husband is just a very gentle, very, very, very good man. I find it hilarious. Sometimes I see in the comments from women that don't like me, and like, it's not me, my message, then they take out on me. And I understand that, but they'll say her husband must be such a narcissist and a controlling, and he's the one making her do this channel. And my husband and I laugh so hard about that, because if you met my husband, he's like the furthest away from a narcissist you could ever imagine, and just so gentle and just such a nice man, and very strong. And he's gotten very strong in himself as a good man. And so, yeah, so I'll go in the bathroom, I'll come out. Yeah, you're right. Thank you. So ladies, we have the ability to override that woman wiring we have inside of us. And when I do that, I feel so good about myself. I feel empowered. I feel proud of who I am. I feel in control. I feel like a mature adult woman, and it's a path of growing and learning. And it's a really amazing experience that you can have. And it's just a choice. So that's a solution for women. Men, you have to know you are not the problem in the communication. And you can look at, how do you show up at work? How do you show up with other people in your life? And recognize that it's the unsafe environment your wife is creating. If you know yourself as a man that is scared to bring things up with your wife, lives in fear of your wife, avoids conflict with your wife, it's not because you're a poor communicator. It's because she's created an environment where it's unsafe to bring things up. With that being said, knowing that, knowing the truth of that is your path forward. And you don't want to be a victim to that. You don't want to live in camp victim to your wife that, well, she's created the unsafe environment and this is just how it is, so I can't do anything about it. That's going to make you angry. It's going to make you feel very stuck and trapped, and it's not a constructive place to be. So you have to be willing to know, yes, your wife is creating this environment, and for the sake of yourself, and fighting for yourself and fighting for your marriage, you have to learn to overcome the gaslighting and the crazy making that your wife creates to make you think that you're the problem, so that you can look at, okay, in a constructive way for yourself to become strong and confident in yourself as a good man, be able to look at what is the weakness in me that I can give that power away to my wife, to be scared to bring things up with her and avoid conflict with her, so that you can overcome that in yourself and find the strength in yourself that when you need to bring something up, you know what's going to happen, but you're willing to walk into the war zone because you are worth it and you're important enough to yourself to bring it up, even though you're about to face the wrath. Her wrath, if you embrace it as an opportunity to grow and learn in yourself, only makes you stronger. And over time, as you're willing to keep doing that, then she might not always come around quickly, but she will learn to respect you, and you can start to potentially see changes in her behavior. But it's really important for men to know that they didn't get the wrong wife. They married a woman. And as I always say, as women on a spectrum, we have these issues and challenges. So it's embracing that to grow and learn in yourself, and you using your wife and your marriage as your greatest teacher as well to become very strong and confident in yourself as a good man. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen today. If you haven't, go check me out on YouTube, Rumble, and X. You can find the links in the description below to connect with me there. For those women listening who know you are the problem and want a path forward to take responsibility and change your own inner turmoil and unhappiness, I have a course for women called the Happiness Program, which is the solution to the unhealthy relationship you have with yourself and the issues and challenges you have in your life and your marriage. You can find the link in the description below to apply for a free consultation with me. And for the good men listening who want a solution to take back the power you've unknowingly given away to your wife, I have a course for you too called the Marriage Rescue Course for Good Men Only that teaches you how to rebuild your strength and confidence as a good man so that you can navigate the relationship with your wife in a healthy, constructive way. Again, you can find the link in the description below to apply for a free consultation with me. Thank you again so much for listening, and I look forward to talking with you soon.